There are things that wander the void and drift through our skies that do not belong to the light of day. Cold, lifeless radars tracking phantoms, ancient shadows waking up in the dark. We pretend we understand this world, but we don't. We are not alone. Step past the campfire. Leave your certainties behind. Join in and know that you are not alone. You are listening to the Still Unexplained Files. Let us look into the dark together.
Hey, there's aliens.
We already know life exists in the universe.
It's been over 8 years since we heard about the government UFO program, ATIP. Are we any closer to an official government disclosure regarding non-human intelligence?
They briefed us on some stuff that was, frankly, terrifying.
The DoD and the intelligence community is very comfortable saying it's unknown.
What are we actually talking about?
I can't share with you the details, ma'am.
There are those who will stop at nothing to hide the truth.
Whistleblowers are safe. I will guarantee that.
I have no job. My career has been tarnished.
People have been killed.
It's likely a balloon, a bird.
It's starting to sound like a broken record.
Exotic materials are the holy grail.
I was on the team that was supposed to receive that.
What I really wanted to do was put some materials in the hands of Arrow.
That came from a UFO.
My bit is stuck. We'll have to try something else.
I mean, that stuff should have liquefied like mercury by now.
I thought it should have. I have no explanation for that.
This is a technology that has long since bled into what we call consciousness.
I'm here to drop off the samples.
Could non-human intelligence come in many forms?
Our historical timeline has been interrupted by an alien intelligence.
There is a variety of life forms.
From the earliest times, we've had writings of people interacting with non-human intelligence.
People have accepted these things as real.
All of this has to do with the nature of reality itself.
When I say we're in a simulation, there is something that is computing.
We live in something that has a software program.
It's all about consciousness.
Perhaps we've been guided subtly and deliberately.
All the religions have been telling us that there are other beings.
We're in the middle of a revolution right now.
There is a dark side to disclosure, a secret too terrible to be told.
Our future is post-biological.
In a sense, they're midwives or undertakers.
The humans served their purpose.
It may not mean surrendering our spirituality.
You can only beat down the truth for so long.
We're at a point where reality doesn't matter.
We have all new questions. It's time to discover what's next. Accidental Truth. Next, a film by Ron James, narrated by Matthew Modine.
Welcome back to Still Unexplained Files. If you thought the battle over UAP disclosure was cooling down, think again. Today, the game completely shifted. Whistleblower David Grush just went on News Nation, and he didn't just double down on what he told Congress under oath. He fundamentally changed the narrative. We aren't just talking about lights in the sky or theoretical life in the universe anymore. Grush is talking about a direct threat to our constitutional framework. He's talking about unknown craft freely operating in restricted airspace over our major cities, while our homeland defense stands by, completely unable to stop them. But what's really going to set Washington on fire is where the money is. Grush is blowing the whistle on massive unconstitutional slush funds to the tune of billions of dollars a year, hidden deep within the bureaucracy to fund illegal crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. He says a network of high-ego, malicious actors in the deep state are actively defying presidential orders and hiding documents from Congress. The veil of secrecy is fracturing, and the financial trail is finally being laid bare. Capital D, disclosure, isn't just a destination anymore. It's happening right now, and it forces us to ask the biggest question of all. What comes next? What comes next? Maybe Ron James. Accidental Truth next beyond UFO disclosure is here. Ron, welcome to Still Unexplained Files. Ron,
thanks for having me on the show.
You literally just launched Next, which argues that disclosure is only the beginning and forces us to look past the basic reality of non-human intelligence. You watched David Grush step up today, talk about billions in missing slush funds, and accuse the DIA of open obstruction. Give me your immediate raw reaction to this.
Well, this is a battle that's been going on for a very long time, ever since they first decided to cover this stuff up, which was as early as the late 30s, with the official kind of disclosure versus cover-up scenario that we have. We have the institution of groups like Majestic 12, whose job it was to decide how we're going to disseminate this to society, which they decided, well, we're not. Instead, we're going to take this information and we're going to bury it as deep as we can. We're going to compartmentalize it, and we're going to put it inside industry where their Freedom of Information Act requests cannot reach. And we're going to maintain this program where a select few are knowledgeable and a select few are going to profit from this information. And then, of course, things that might alter the course of human destiny, like free energy or all kinds of other technologies that would help us, including the knowledge that we're not alone, we're going to keep that from the population. And so that's what's been done. And this is the latest attempt by some people to uncover it. But I also think that it's part of a controlled disclosure process, that none of this is happening organically.
You know, he referenced the slush fund financial trail. Grush explicitly tied his investigation into the administration's focus on government waste, claiming he uncovered undocumented slush funds worth billions of dollars per year being funneled into off-the-book UAP activities. What's your take on this slush fund trail?
Well, I think it's an interesting approach. I don't know how effective it's going to be. A lot of this waste, fraud, and abuse that the Trump administration is looking for is actual waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, if you arguably divert $1 billion so that you can figure out how to reverse engineer a flying saucer, I'm not sure that's waste, fraud, and abuse. That's just secret stuff. So at the end of the day, yes, billions of dollars has been missing from military and Pentagon budgets for years and years. They failed every single audit they've ever had. The amount of black programs that have occurred almost rival the defense budget itself. And, that buys a lot of research and development. So where is that money going? But does it fit under waste, fraud, and abuse? We're not sure. But anything that can help peel open the sardine can from whatever angle you're doing it is going to help.
Ken, jump in. Your take on this slush fund financial trail.
Well, I agree with Ron. I think everything he said was pretty much reaching into my brain and pulling it out, because that's what I would do if I was in control. I would do exactly what Ron said. There's a lot of diversion. And as I told you guys earlier, what is the fundamental thing that you do when you're trying to control a group? You're sending information out just a little bit at a time, but you're also sending people in so many directions that they're confused. And when people get confused, when human beings get confused, what do? They give up. They just go about their day. They just hear it in the background. It becomes background noise. So everything Ron, I have nothing to add on for what Ron said, because I think he's right. everything that you're seeing, like Tim Burchard getting up there and becoming more aggressive, David Koresh becoming more aggressive. Part of that could also be, and we don't know, but it could be exactly that. It could be hey, we're going to let these people do this so we can test what's going on to see how much information we can give, because none of this is new. They've been doing things like this for 40 years on other projects and programs.
Maria, give us your final or the final take on this slush fund.
This is information we've been hearing for years. Wasn't there, we were talking about this weekend, wasn't there some type of hearing or press conference that came up the day before 9/11? And then that kind of went unheard of after that because of what happened. So
yeah, we've had resurgences of this stuff. That we had the hearings back in the 50s where General Samford and Don Keogh came forward talking about this stuff and saying basically the same thing.
After a 1 year's investigation, I believe that the flying saucers seen by veteran airline and Air Force pilots are objects from another planet. The Air Force itself has officially admitted that flying saucers exist. This statement appears in Project Saucer Case number 75. Not only that, the Air Force has officially analyzed the motives of possible visitors from space. Here is a direct quotation from the official report. Such a civilization might observe that on Earth we now have atomic bombs and are fast developing rockets. In the past history of mankind, they should be alarmed. We should therefore expect at this time above all to behold such visitation.
There's things in the sky, we don't know what they are, we'll let you know. And people don't understand that 2017 was the beginning of a literal repeat performance of this. I put it in the first Accidental Truth movie, we documented this, that we're seeing a replay of a tired narrative.
The next narrative on this, on David Grush's takes today, was the active DIA obstruction. He openly accused the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, of obstructing Representative Anna Paulina Luna's congressional task force, demanding they immediately halt the stonewalling and submit the files to the mandatory declassification review. Ron, what's your take on the DIA obstruction?
Well, I think there's camps inside of all these onion layers of secrecy, and the amount of information they're willing to let out goes from none to let's at least acknowledge that there's non-human intelligence, and neither camp goes much further beyond that. So when we see what's happening with the DIA blocking stuff, this is the playbook. We keep talking about these whistleblowers like David Grush and Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and even Jake Barber, these people that have come forward. We have to do a litmus test here. And the litmus test is, if you have to clear what you're going to say through the Department of Defense before you go on News Nation, you're not a whistleblower. You're part of the narrative. You are playing your role in what has been agreed upon will be revealed. And so people, I'm not saying these guys aren't heroes. I'm not saying David Grush isn't doing an honorable job at what he's doing, but he's still doing a job.
Ken, your take.
Ron's speaking my language. They're feeding people. It's sort of when you enter this game, it's like a game of basketball or anything else. You're in a league with everyone else and everyone knows the rules. And as he said, there's levels to the rules. So Representative Luna may at some point understand or get fed some information. And just like we talked about, Kevin, there's a game set up where here's a role here, you're playing the part, and throughout history, all this has been passed down. And as Ron just said, they're letting a little bit at a time. And as he said also, 2017 is a repeat. So really you could call the game replay because of replay.
Yeah, they didn't even hire a new screenwriter. They just let the same guy use the same script, ran it through Chat GPT, changed the dates, and that's what we got.
Right. He's right.
That's exactly right. You can't add anything better to that.
Finish the obstruction take, Maria.
You can't come out and keep your retirement, keep your pension, keep your life talking about this stuff. The real people are the experiencers that MUFON gets involved with, and you're never going to hear about those.
One of his next takes was airspace vulnerability. Pivoting from aliens to immediate national security, Grush stated that unknown objects have operated over restricted airspace and critical infrastructure for decades, and the agencies responsible for our homeland cannot defend against them. I mean, that's a narrative that's been discussed really since 2017. I mean, for mainstream. Ron, and anything to add to that?
Yeah, I like to just take people on simple thought experiments, because conclusions, you can say, well, that's all conjecture, you can't prove that. So let's do a little thought experiment around that statement. We have the biggest defense industry in the history of humanity. Okay. Now, if we had technology that could defeat anything we can put against it, and it's been around since the 1950s, then why would this gigantic monolith of this defense industry continue to say, oh, I don't know, we don't look at that? I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. Of course they're looking at it. The proof of the phenomenon, and the proof that they're doing whatever they can to either harness the technology or counteract it, that just lies in that that's their mission to do that. And then when you add in all the missing money, the amount of stuff we're not being told is so off the charts that none of these people can escape accountability. And that's one of the reasons that we're getting this controlled feeding of information. They're going to tell us as little as possible because there's too much that they've covered up that they just can't uncover. And what's really bothering me lately is I know all these politicians. I've sat in Tim Burchett's office. I've talked to Andre Carson. I've talked to the different people there when I was making my film. And in the very beginning, you guys will notice these guys were gung-ho. We're going to get this information. We're going to get it to the public, or come hell or high water, dadgummit, Tim. But, what they're doing now is they're saying things increasingly. They said it today. Well, if you knew the things that I knew, well, dude, you're supposed to be getting those things that we don't know and telling us what they are. You're not supposed to become an instrument of the secrecy because you got your security clearance and you got read into some stuff, and now you're part of well, I'd like to say something, but I can't. These guys have literally been co-opted into becoming part of the problem. And it's like, I understand that you got to get your security clearance, and then once you have it, you can't violate it. And I understand that there's probably some national security at play here, obviously. But they've become instruments of the narrative. They started off as proponents that were on our side, and now they're revealing what they're being told they can reveal and keeping secrets they're being told they have to keep. That's not helping.
One of my genuine concerns with all this is, will any of these people, the Congress people, the inside people who are pushing this narrative, will they all of a sudden become part of the narrative, players in this game?
Well, that's what we're seeing right now. And if we follow the brief history of this, let's look at Marco Rubio for a minute. In the very beginning, before the first hearing, where we had Moulton and Bray from the defense intelligence groups come up and testify that they knew nothing about nothing, basically, Marco Rubio was front and center. He was making a lot of noise about getting to the truth about the whole UFO thing. I mean, he was really out in front. And then they had those hearings, and then later that day, they went into a private hearing. And then Marco Rubio walks out of that room. I don't even think he talked to anybody. He turned the corner and ran off, and he quit talking about it. And then when he did, he did the interviews for Age of Disclosure, but that was around the same time. And when he got interviewed about that film, he literally threw it under the bus. He said things like, well, they had to get creative with the editing. Well, they're trying to make a movie. Those were just things I was told. I have no knowledge of them. So basically, something happened in that closed session where Marco Rubio decided that it was time to keep his mouth shut and just allow the people in charge to stay in charge. And I think this is
he allowed himself to keep his mouth shut, or he needed to keep his mouth shut, as in somebody's, I don't want to.
I'm seeing the fingerprints of something where, if you tell somebody you're going to keep this secret or else we're going to kill your family or whatever, however these guys play the game now, that's one thing. You're under threat, which really instills a rebellious sense, and it's going to make anybody with a spine want to fight that process. But if you are taken into a room and said, look, this is why we can't tell people everything, and then you understand all of a sudden, then you come out and you haven't been threatened into supporting the narrative or supporting the controlled disclosure. You have internally agreed that you probably should. So I'm not saying like Marco Rubio would have to agree to do something, because he wouldn't have the power to agree. But there's a difference between keeping a secret because you're threatened over it and keeping a secret because you think it's the right thing to do. And I think what we see with people get read in, all of a sudden they're keeping the secret because they think it's the right thing to do, which is even scarier.
One of the last talking points from Grush's statements today was the weaponization of the Espionage Act. He disclosed that following his 2023 testimony, the Air Force cooperated with an external agency to launch a retaliatory investigation against him under the Espionage Act, and is still actively blocking his military medical retirement. What say you, Dave or Ron?
That may or may not be true. I mean, I'm sure it is true, but I'm not sure that it's real. You know, Lou Elizondo went through a lot of stuff, you know, that he could describe as career interference, as interfering with his security clearances, all of these different things, right? But at the end of the day, nothing happened to him. And so I think that part of being a good whistleblower is being able to talk about how bad it is you're being treated. And so, you know, I'm very sorry if those things are actually happening to David Grush, but I don't think that anything's going to come of it. I think that it might just be part of building the whistleblower persona. And I know I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying what I just said, but you know, I don't think David Grush is going to jail anytime soon. We're not going to see him hauled off in handcuffs. And
you won't get in trouble with us. we're believing that we know every bit of this. We've been watching.
Well, there'll be somebody watching this show that'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's sticking his head out on a limb. But you know, that's why, like the new film Accidental Truth Next, it will do a certain amount of volume. It will not do the volume of a James Fox movie or a Corbell movie. And one of the reasons is because we have a very select niche of people who are being, quote, allowed. And this is happening in the media. We have reporters, we have journalists, and we have filmmakers who are walking a certain line. And because they're willing to do that, they're getting support. And there's other people that are
frozen. Big Brother's listening. Pull the cord.
Yeah, you know, my VPN keeps resetting, and I have no idea why it would even do it. So, but yeah, so the people that are willing to toe the line and support controlled disclosure, even if they appear not to be, it's really interesting what I'm seeing unfold.
Final thoughts on Grush today. Ken, I'll start with you.
Well, pretty much I can't really add too much more about the Grush thing. Ron knows a lot, has a lot of good information about it, and I see that unfolding every chance a person like David Grush gets. How far is he really giving? How much information is he really giving to us that hasn't been given to him, to say it's okay to give to us? Here, go out there and, you know, maybe a few of these things you weren't supposed to, but you're doing certain things. You're kind of getting it. You're basically becoming a lead. And when you are leading like that, other people are coming out and saying things. You're becoming a readiness person. You're readying people at each level, another level. And so I think this is just something they have to do. I think, not to get into politics, because I just don't want to about all of this, but it's sort of, you know, current administration, some people are saying, hey, I want you to just go out there and maybe make a little extra stink. It diverts attention. And misdirection is the big key always. It's always about slight bits of misdirection. And media are playing into it. Grush, any of the other whistleblowers that you want to, you know, say, Jake, I'm not saying any of them haven't had profound experiences. I will always say they probably did. However, are they really being allowed to tell the truth, just as Tim Burchett said and Ron was talking about? Well, if you get into a skiff and you hear something and you're not able to tell us, but you're going this far, why don't you put it all on the line? Why don't you do like they did when they founded this country? They weren't paid. They gave and sacrificed their land. If you believe in this situation, sacrifice something. Show me, and I could get in trouble for that. Like David Grush hasn't sacrificed, but you play seesaw. A person like David Grush can make a lot of money on the circuit, a lot. And if he knows how to play it, he gets a publicist, he writes a book, he does these other things. He can make a couple million. So
well, see, that's what's going to happen, eventually. Jay Stratton just came out with his book. Lou Elizondo has made millions off of his first and second books and his appearance and working with Age of Disclosure. So David Grush has a bright future, and right now we can say, oh, the sky is falling, they're coming after me. Nobody's coming after him.
Maria, turn to you. I know you had some talking points to share. You want to bring those up and share with Ron?
No, I yield my time to Ron James so we can go to the accidental truth next. This is what I want to talk about.
All right, let's do that. Before we go to that, can we play a couple of clips from today? Do you mind? Are we good with that or not?
Oh, no, go for it for sure.
All right, let me just do it. Ken will perform his magic editing. And all right, let's see. Sound.
About this issue, and he kept his word to me. He kept his word, and I think that's important. I think we also need to remember too, when I'm sitting in a skiff and some little punk in a man bun tells me the president's on a need-to-know basis, folks, that ought to tell you right there what we're up against. We're up against corruption. We're up against a cover-up. This thing's been covered up at least since 1947. Dadgummit, the public deserves the right to know. It's your dadgum tax dollars. It's not about little green men or flying saucers. It's about what are we spending all these millions and possibly billions of dollars on that these idiots tell us don't exist. And then yet we turn right around in the skip and then they tell us they do exist. This is a cover-up. You all know it. We know it. We demand the answers, and dadgummit, we're going to get them. Look, we got one or two bites at this apple. Please be careful about the false information that's coming out of Washington on all this stuff. Trust your gut. You know what's right. You know they exist. You know this has been a cover-up since before most of y'all been born. Thank y'all so much. Let's keep fighting for the truth. And thank you, Donald Trump, for keeping your word to me. And you all deserve to be in that skiff with us. We shouldn't be the gatekeepers, and none else of these jugheads up here should either. All right? Let's get at it. Thank y'all.
Ron, would you, if you had the opportunity, would you sit in on one of those skiffs? Any of them?
No, and I'll tell you exactly why. And I've told these people, I've had the not to be in a skiff, but I've had the opportunity to be told things that I shouldn't tell anybody else. And I say the same thing every time. I'm like, look, I exist to dig up information, however I do it, fair and square, and deliver it to the world. If you don't want it in my next movie, you shouldn't tell me. I do not want to be I don't want to bear the burden of your secret. And that's really what it is. I mean, can you imagine what it must be like? I mean, all these people are still people. Can you imagine what it must be like to carry that under threat of opening your mouth? Knowledge, it could change the entire course of humanity, and your family could be ruined if you reveal it. I wouldn't want that. So no, I've turned down every opportunity I've ever had to be told something I couldn't repeat. But the information in my films, I dug that shit up fair and square. Whoops, did I said
no? You can
you're good.
Speak really. Speak really.
And it's just like in Accidental Truth, the very first one. All that information about Patel and material studies and all this stuff that was covered up, nobody sat me in a room and told me something and then said you can't repeat it. I did good old-fashioned detective work, and I dug that stuff up and I put it in a film. And it's the same thing in the new movie. I was watching Tim today when he was saying that stuff, and I was kind of smiling, because if you watch the new Accidental Truth next, people ask, with all these military guys going in and out of Congress, telling them stuff and not telling them stuff, did they ever hear from the UFO community about the things that we know? And in the film, you see that, yes, indeed, we did, because I videotaped me briefing Tim Burchett, and he literally in this thing today almost repeated my briefing word for word. It was not, that might be an exaggeration, but all the information that I gave him, and I'm not saying I was his only source, but I have proven to the world that these guys were briefed by the independent UFO community in a way that the military and the insiders could never do. And it's in the movie. And so to see that today was exceptionally gratifying because, you know, I've played a little small role in all of this moving forward. And to see Tim, you know, talking about since 1947, the cover up and everything else. Yeah, I mean, I told him these things. I'm not saying he didn't already know them, but I'm saying that not only did I tell him a lot of what he said today, I videotaped it and put it in a film for the world to see. And so that was gratifying.
Very much so. All right, let's get into the real reason why we're here tonight. Our guest tonight went on News Nation and leveled a heavy warning. The government's path on disclosure is leading us straight into a dead end. He's here, Ron James, to tell us how to break through that bottleneck. He's the media relations director for MUFON and the filmmaker behind the multi-award-winning Accidental Truth series. His latest, Accidental Truth Next, just hit the streaming platforms on June 2nd, which Mary and I watched, paid the rental, and watched it and enjoyed it. And enjoyed it. Please welcome back to this segment, Ron James. Ron, thanks again for doing this. When you went on News Nation and you warned the world of this path, elaborate for us, for our viewers.
Well, we are going to get some sort of disclosure. How deep it is remains to be seen. I was very encouraged today because James Fox brought up experiencers for the first time into the conversation, which so far has been a tough sell in DC. These guys are willing to, like when you're sitting talking to a congressperson or a staffer, they're willing to nod and agree about reverse engineering programs and unexplained phenomenon. But when you start talking about abductions and experiencers having direct communication with non-human intelligence and all those things that go with you know, the tinfoil hat, their eyes glaze over and they're just not ready to have that conversation. And one of the things that I believe, and I will say this, I hope I'm proven wrong. I really do. But we are never going to get the entire truth about this phenomenon from the government and from this political process. We have a political process of disclosure that is giving us a dog and pony show that's going to end up in some level of revelation to humanity. But the true extent of the secrecy, the true extent of the lies, the true extent of the technological leaps and bounds that have been achieved through these clandestine operations, and the true extent of literal crimes against humanity that have been created by not informing the human race of our true condition, they are never going to come forward and say that stuff. There is never going to be a day, I believe, like I said, I'd like to be wrong, but there's never going to be a day when Donald Trump doesn't stand up at a podium with a stack full of files and start showing us crash retrievals. It's never going to happen, even if, and that is a huge part of the truth. So we're watching this process unfold. People are deciding what information we're going to get, and they're very cleverly laying it out in a way that it appears organic, but there are hidden hands at work here, and they will never tell us the entire truth. They can't. It goes all the way back to the beginning of human history as we know it. It goes back to the churches and the Vaticans and the religious systems all taking this information and covering it up and then putting it into their teachings. The true level of deception, I believe, will never be revealed through a political process of disclosure.
Ken, what you got?
Ron's awesome.
All right, next. That's the soundbite of the night, right?
Ron is he's hitting everything that I.
Ron, where have you been all our lives, man? Where have you been?
Hey, I've been saying this stuff for years, but I'm not one of those people that's out waving my hand around saying, "Hey, me, I want to be famous UFO guy." There's too many of those, and the bigger the field gets, now there's potential money. You could be a millionaire being a UFO filmmaker. It used to be you sacrificed your entire life to make a UFO film. So there's sharks in the water. The new people that are up and coming on these podcasts, and you guys know who you are, man. They know half as much and they're twice as mean. And what we're seeing is this whole new resurgence, only now it's about money. And so the UFO field has always been rough and tumble. It's way rough and tumble now, man. You walk into a Twitter room and just be prepared to be treated so badly that you just want to walk away and never say the word UFO again. So my opinions come from years and years of studying this stuff and having enough intuition to read between the lines of what I'm seeing, and then being able to get out there and voice them. But it's interesting. There's several podcasts that do not want to hear what I have to say, no matter how many millions of views I get across these smaller podcasts. There's a couple of big ones that won't have me on, and it's really funny.
I've always been one of those people that I want to hear what the opposite side says always, and the truth will set you free, as they say. And at least let me make the decision.
Well, that's journalism. That's how it's supposed to work.
It's not supposed to work.
No,
but when you're renting the when you're renting the Masonic temple to conduct interviews while you're in Washington D.C., that's sort of a reveal. I don't think a lot of people caught that, but there's a lot of places to shoot a video in D.C. besides inside the Masonic lodge.
Let me get Maria in here. For the record, Maria, when he referenced podcasters twice as mean, I swear I did not tell him about you. I did not give him that.
I know Maria. She looks pretty rough and tumble. I don't want to piss her off.
He'll find out later.
What you got, Maria?
One of my biggest things I've never been able to understand. So now we're talking about lights in the sky. We've got videos that have come up. We're talking about non-human entities. Why is it so far-fetched for somebody to talk to a witness that has actually watched one land in their backyard and then interact with one?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Why is that so woo-woo compared to what we're seeing now?
It has a lot to do with the people. And Maria, you opened up this whole show in a way that is really important, and that is that experiencers, in my opinion, that we cannot solve this puzzle without starting to look at these things that defy explanation, and experiencers have a big role to play in that. And the reason that there's that lapse right now is because right now we're focusing on pilots and military people, or these witnesses in these events. There is a huge level of credibility attached. So in other words, when you look at what it takes to become a fighter pilot, that is no small achievement. That is a lifetime of dedication. You have to be a person of high integrity, of high physical and mental acuity, and you're just a stand-up version of humanity. Now, when you start talking about people that are experiencers, they usually, obviously, they're not, especially experiencers. Most of them are just average people, and so they don't have that built-in credibility behind them that comes from being, a military fighter jet pilot. So a lot of the stuff that we're hearing come through the official thing right now is because it's coming from people that can be established as highly credible. Plus, it's inside government, so having that government affiliation helps to bolster their stories. The thing is they're not really telling us the whole stories. If you're a fighter pilot and you have something fly 10 feet from your plane, okay, that's pretty shocking, but it doesn't, except for like Jake Barber's story, which kind of crosses the line into experiencer land. A lot of these guys are just witnessing technology. So in order for us to parse all of this, and that's why in my film, we spend a certain amount of time inside DC, and I've had reviews say, "Oh, we're just watching the same old stuff." But if you watch what I put in the movie, there's things going on in Washington D.C. that nobody is privy to, that you're finding out in the film. So, you know, I think people should watch it with fresh eyes, especially the stories about Kirsten Gillibrand and her belief in Arrow, or what Arrow was about. But then we take that esoteric turn to the it's a wide right, and it goes into materials and strange things happening around materials and the strange stories of experiencers. Because I think that that's the next thing we have to look at. We have to take all of this stuff that we already know from material science, and then we have to realize that half of it actually doesn't work, especially when you accept that consciousness is fundamental. And the whole UFO phenomenon, that turns us to a whole different way of looking at reality. And so my whole film is about not answering questions about what's next. It's about trying to figure out what those questions need to be. And I think the experiencers, Maria, you're dead on. They fit right into, yeah, we got to start listening to these guys.
Right. And there's a lot of the experiencers that they have gotten metal. They've gotten something, radiation poisoning. There's something that happened to these people.
It's a new trend. It's alien abduction with cash and prizes. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
But that evidence goes somewhere.
When you say metal, Maria, are you talking about implants, or what are you talking about?
Well, either implants or something fell off of the UFO.
Like Benny's story in my film. Yeah. You know, he says that the metal that he got came off a flying saucer. Yeah. I don't know if it did. It's been tested as just nothing but a bunch of aluminum, no big deal. In fact, that's what Arrow said, because I gave it to them to test, and they did. But then other people have said, no, this stuff has all kinds of things going on with it that we can't explain. I've put it in the hands of psychics. I have, where is it? I have a sample here. In the film, there's a scene where the drill bit gets stuck in this metal. And this is the core sample from that. And I've taken this jar, and it's not scientific by any stretch of the imagination, but I've asked psychics to just put it in their hands and tell me what they feel. Not a single one has said nothing, it's metal. Every single one of them says, you know, this feels weird. There's some kind of consciousness here. It's really strange. And, you know, people that are watching the movie that want to be critical of that are going to be. And I'm not saying that this metal came from a flying saucer, but what I will say is that this guy's been having this metal tested by many nefarious agencies for years. Tom DeLonge and Lou Elizondo and Chris Bledsoe went to this guy's house to get a sample of this material, gave it to Hal Puthoff, gave it to Jacques Vallée, who gave it to Gary Nolan. And where's the lab test? Oh, yeah, can't tell you.
Oops.
So you know, these stories about these materials, and the second one about the Russian sample, some guy from Russia calls us up and says, this alien gave me this stuff and said it was part of his ship. We're just laughing all the way to wherever we laugh all the way to until we get the stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, this is something. And then, you know, the third one about Nancy Burson and her getting these little pellets, that should have solved itself in 5 seconds. So one set of lab tests should have said, yeah, that's what this is. It's nothing. No, it could be microbeads, or it could be this, or it could be insect eggs. It could be any of those things. The problem is it's not. And when these things were brought into her life, they came with her getting these communications. Right. And so I think that experiencers are increasingly being given some kind of thing to help bolster their story. And, you know, even if this stuff just turns out to be nothing but scrap aluminum and it means nothing, then why all the secrecy, and why all the people that have been interested in it? And why can't the guy get a straight answer from any one of 10 government agencies that have tested it? So yeah, that's what I'm talking about with the experiencers actually receiving physical stuff in their world. And it can appear like it fell from a flying saucer, or this one guy had appeared on his coffee table. He was throwing it away for a few days. And then,
that was very interesting.
I'd love to put you on the spot, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but you brought up someone I was going to ask you about. Chris Bledsoe. His case is incredible to me. There's something about it. I'm not sure. I could be fooled, but he just feels to me like there's something coming off of him that seems like he's. I want to use the word. I don't want to use the phrase "telling the truth," but do you have a high conviction around?
Well, you know, Chris has promised me he was going to be in this film.
Of that.
And for some reason we'd be like, oh, we're going to do an interview in 10 minutes, and then there's no Chris. So we know each other, and I certainly wouldn't say anything to discredit him. I think that he needs to work on his predictions a little better. But something's going on. And I'll tell you something, when Chris Bledsoe was first bringing his abilities or these communications, when he brought them to the attention of others, the entire, dark, deep cover guys immediately surrounded him. I mean, he had John Alexander in there looking at what's going on. He had Tim Taylor, who is probably the ultimate guy that could tell you, but he'd have to kill you guy. He had these people come in, and the stuff in his book about how they were looking at his abilities and bringing him into real projects and real programs and reading him into some pretty serious stuff. That's all true. So whatever it is about Chris, rather people want to dismiss him or they're disappointed in things that he said were going to happen and didn't, or they believe the stuff that they see. There is something genuinely happening around Chris Bledsoe, and it's been acknowledged by people that are really, they wouldn't be wasting their time if he wasn't the real deal.
I do need to bring up something I thought was very, for me, cool to see Nick Pope in your film. This had to be one of his final on-camera interviews. Fair?
Yeah, I think he did some after he notified the world that he was not going to be around much longer. But Nick Pope, yeah, when I was, do I have a minute to just talk about Nick? This in this UFO community, I was just an average guy. I had a production company, and I was a writer, and I owned a graphics company before that, before I even got into video. But I was always watching the TV shows and the movies, and I was totally moved by Chariots of the Gods. It was the first and only UFO film to ever go worldwide theatrical and make a big splash. So that's how long I've been looking at that. The interesting thing is that I would read UFO magazine, and there was this guy who had a column in UFO magazine. His name was Nick Pope, and he worked for the British Ministry of Defense, and he was still actually at that desk. And he was writing this column like the UFO community was worthy of being spoken to seriously by a guy in government. And he was one of the very first people who officially came out from a government standpoint and at least acknowledged that we should be talked to and treated like we weren't crazy. And, Stanton Friedman was the other one who really influenced me, because here we had a nuclear scientist that was talking about this stuff. This guy had all kinds of credibility as an educated person, and he was uncovering this stuff and coming forward with it. So Nick and Stan were both really, really big influences on me that made me pay more attention to the field than people that with less credible backgrounds. And so I was living in Sedona at the time, and Steve Bassett comes through town. And so I wanted to interview him. And when he found out I had a production company, he asked me if I would do the X conference for him. So over the years, I produced 2 or 3 of his X conferences, and I also produced the citizen hearing on Disclosure. My production company came and was the group that filmed that and all of that. And that first X conference, all of a sudden, all these guys that I looked up to, there, I'm standing there with them. There's Stanton Friedman. There's George Knapp, for crying out loud. That guy's like a hero. And there's Nick Pope, and there's Colonel John Alexander, people who would later become very important to me. And so I asked Nick for an interview, and he gave me one. And over the years, I interviewed him 7 times, and we had beers together, and we hung out, and we had deep discussions. And I put him on the spot a lot. And he was always a good sport, and he was always a friend, and he never said no. And he's been in almost every one of my productions. And so to lose him was tragic. And in this film, he says some things that I don't think anybody's heard him say. And, things about simulation theory, things about the dark side of disclosure. So we have a Nick Pope that we've never seen before in this movie. And I didn't have time to put his name in the dedication because the film had already been turned in. But yeah, Chris O'Brien, my editor, who's worked with me for years and years, he's well known for the Stalking the Herd and the Mysterious Valley books about cattle mutilation. He actually passed away in the middle of this production. And so, you know, it's really sad to lose him as well.
Yep. You know, with Accidental Truth next, again, narrated by Matthew Modine, featuring actor Thomas Jane. Ron, your documentary film has already earned 7 festival wins, 3 honorable mentions, 5 semifinalist placements. Throw that in our face. Why don't you?
Well, the first Accidental Truth movie won 28 different film festival awards. And the reason it's such a high number is because in one film festival, it won every category that it was in, which was very gratifying.
Which film festival was that, Ron?
It was the 40th Film Festival in either 2023 or 2024. So this one, and you know, the thing about winning film festival awards is just enter a lot of film festivals, right? It's there's a website. I'll tell the world this. It's no secret. There's a website called Film Freeway. There's hundreds of film festivals all over the world. And if you budget a certain amount of money, because I like trophies, I like it when those things come in the mail and they look great on my wall. So enter film festivals, enter as many as you can. And sometimes you're going to win or place. But I mean, unless your film's really terrible, it'll happen. And so, you know, that's my trick to winning awards, but it's really just enter contests. Matthew Modine did you? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go.
Oh, I was just going to say Matthew Modine did the first Accidental Truth, and I was going to make the sequel. It was going to be called like Accidental Truth 1.5 or something. It wasn't going to be a full-blown sequel. It was going to be a director's cut. And so I wrote a few pages, went up to New York, and we recorded that. But then when I got back, I realized I can't make this an extended version. It's going to be a full-blown sequel. So I had to call Matthew up, and there were contractual issues with that. So of the way our agreement was structured, that he would read for a director's cut, but I never asked him to do a sequel. And I wasn't going to be sneaky about it. So I called him up and said, hey, this is turning into a full-blown sequel. I'm on a limited budget, but what can we do? And he was like, well, for one thing, I want to be involved, obviously. And he came in and we worked out something that was easy to do. And it did our third read together, and we've hung out. He's become a friend over time. And,
cool.
You know, I have a lot of respect for him for a variety of reasons. And then Thomas came into the film. Him and I were speaking at the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. We had a presentation one day at their monthly event where we were both speaking, and he got up and he talked a lot about AI and stuff. And I was looking at it and I'm thinking, you know, there's a lot of what he's saying that's in my film, but nobody's saying it quite as well as him. And so I got up and gave my presentation, and I think he liked it as well. And after the presentation, I said, look, Thomas, I've got a lot of information. We're kind of rolling over each other. I don't want you to think that I gleaned stuff from your presentation. Is there any way you'd interview and let me put you in my film? And he said yes. And you know, he's an esteemed actor, and so he did, and he brings an amazing role to it. And then finally we have Alan Howarth. In the very last week that we were shooting that I was editing the film, and I had to get it into the distributor, I played it. I gave it to Paul Davids, who's my friend. He made the Roswell movie. He's an executive producer on this. And he played it for a couple of their friends. And he texted me back in the middle of the night, and he's like, this music has to go. It's ruining the film. And I'm like, okay. Because what I did was I was taking stock music from a website called Storyblocks. And you're able to license music, but then they keep changing their music licenses. So the music that I licensed, it was supposed to be universal use, all of a sudden it's YouTube copyright is flagging it. And they're telling me that I can't use it on Amazon, and all kinds of complications to using music that was supposed to be royalty free. And so I just said, screw this. I'm gonna hop on Sunu and I'm gonna write all original music with artificial intelligence. And with everybody thought it was horrible. So
too bad you couldn't get Smashing Pumpkins in on that. So
yeah, I know. And, I actually produced. Yeah, I actually was a cameraman at one of their concerts.
Yeah.
We did our homework. We did our homework. Yeah.
Yeah, I did Smashing Pumpkins Oceana. I think it's still out there. It was shot in 3D, and it was at the Oceana Auditorium in New Jersey, I think. But back to the music real quick. And then we can talk about music videos because I've done a lot. But I was in a bind, and I had just interviewed Alan Howarth for another project that I'm doing with JJ and Desiree Hertok because they know him. And I called him up, and I'm like, Alan, you know how you said you'd help me with my movie if I wanted it? And he's like, yeah, I remember. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think I might want you to help out with the music. And he says, well, how much? I'm like, that scene in Terminator. All of it, I think. He just laughs. And then he said, yeah, you know, I've got some stuff and I could come up with some original stuff. How much time do I have? And I was 5 days. And he said, I could do it. And it was like, whoa. So now I got the guy that is, I mean, he's Hollywood royalty as far as composers. He did the John Carpenter's movies, Christine, The Thing, Escape from New York, a bunch of the Halloween movies. And he's best known for being the guy that invented the sound effect for the hoverboard in Back to the Future. So he composed the entire film, and Sony Music is actually selling the soundtrack. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, I got some star power blessings.
I guess this goes back to the experiencers and stuff, and we're talking about disclosure and all of that. We are the people that understand that this happens. Experiencers, UFOs, we've not just seen lights in the sky. So if they're going to do any kind of, say, the aliens come down out of the sky, are people really going to be freaking out? I mean, we're going to be geeking out, but
I don't think so. I used to think, hey, just lay it all out. Humanity can handle it. And even now, I'm saying we just do catastrophic disclosure, man. Let's get a bunch of people who worked in these programs to get their hands on some of this stuff and put it someplace where the scientific community can evaluate it and test it. Bring the spaceship out. We need something absolutely definitive. And I've had it. These guys that are keeping the secret have had over 100 years to level with us, and they're not. So why do they deserve another decade? So my feeling is, yeah, let's do catastrophic disclosure. But then people are saying, well, we can't handle the truth. And Danny Sheehan, who I work with, he's in my movie. I know him. You know, he's part of this controlled disclosure that we're seeing, and he thinks it's the best way to do it. And maybe it is. I used to think, no, just tell us the whole thing. But now I realize that it has to do with context. If they were going to come out and say, hey, there's non-human intelligence, they come from a variety of places, there's life forms we don't even know about, they're here, they're not bothering us, everything's cool, we'll keep you posted. Well, life goes on, right? Everybody just goes, yes, thank you, and they go back to their lives, you know, pretty much unmoved. But if that thing is, hey, you know, there's non-human intelligence all around us, we can't defend against them, we don't know what they want, we could very well be their property. There's all kinds of things happening that we have absolutely no solution for. You know, then it's mass panic. And then if you get into, well, I'll put the religious part in next. So yeah, it's all the context of what the disclosure means and what the implications are. So there is no blanket, we can handle the truth, because there's some situations where clearly we couldn't. But then what's really entering into the conversation even more, because now we're having the church come forward. Catholic Church a few years ago came forward and said, yeah, there could be aliens, they're still God's children. That was their acknowledgement that they could fundamentally handle the situation. But what I'm seeing is battle lines are being drawn between the angels and demons camp and the possible UFO camp. And these lines, these people are circling the wagons and they're ready to go at it. And that is really, it's not productive, to say the least. I will be the first one to say that as you look at traditional spiritual teachings and religious writings, there are plenty of portrayals of non-human intelligence taking the sides of good and evil. And if you want to say that part of this phenomenon could be angels and demons as seen through those filters, I'm all for it. I'm like, look, that's probably correct. But there's other elements at play here, but they don't want to say they don't want to acknowledge that there's other elements at play. They call it that. It's inside the Pentagon, it's inside the government, it's inside the religious institutions. Even
Vatican.
JD Vance is like, oh yeah, it's angels or demons. It's like, dude, shut up. But the at the end of the day, this is showing me that there's going to be a huge divide on how we interpret the information. And that divide is already starting, and it's going to have a big effect on societal belief systems. So and nobody's really planning for that. Danny Sheehan's trying to put stuff in place. I'm sure that there's rumors about the churches being consulted, but churches have been consulted about this for years. I don't know how society is going to handle it when it comes out, because right now I'm seeing it splintering society more than bringing it together, and that's a tragedy.
That's a good take.
I know we also have experiencers, and I promise I'll hush.
No.
Experiencers that they have a great experience, euphoric, peaceful, and then you have the ones that are terrified.
Now, is that
can't
because
function.
they're experiencing it with different types of beings, different,
Who knows?
I mean, if you got a nice alien, then he'll probably play nice. But if you have, what is it, the reptilians are the bad ones and all that. But
Yeah, some of the grays, all that good stuff.
Well, you know, the Travis Walton experience, and I helped produce his biography, The True Story of Travis Walton, the movie. I played a small role. I'm not like the producer, but Jennifer Stein made that film. And the story of Travis kind of calls to our attention that it's possible that there's a whole variety, maybe not a lot, but a few different types of beings that are here doing this work for different reasons. So, you know, the people that Travis ran into, if you can call them people, they were humanoid. It was almost like they were a survey team out doing scientific studies, and they accidentally hit Travis with a beam, and they took him on to repair him. Whereas there's other groups that are doing bona fide abduction programs, and then even the U.S. government is possibly doing them with the MyLabs. So it's another one of those. It's the context. Most experiencers from MUFON'S catalog of cases, especially the ones where it's happening over and over again, they will report that the first time or two that it happened was absolutely terrifying. It was life-changing. But then over time, they began to accept it and were more comfortable with it, and weren't in this state of shock and fear, but were more actually, it became positive for them. Right. So yeah, there's people that have great experiences right out of the gate. There's people that have horrifying experiences right out of the gate. But there seems to be an overall trend that no matter where it starts, what your first experience was, it ends up being something that you come to grips with. But that being said, if you look at experiencers, they show a lot of experiencers show a lot of signs of trauma in life. And so you can have experiencers sitting in a room, and you're going to spot things that they have in common. And I'm not going to say what those things are, but it seems as though there is definitely a major effect on the life of a human being who is dealing with this reality.
You know, one of the talking points in your film, it was Nick Pope that mentioned, maybe someone else, the simulation theory. What's your take on that?
You know, it's really interesting. We really need to accept the idea of simulation theory a lot better than we do collectively. And the reason for that is really simple. People have a hard time wrapping their head around simulation theory because they remember The Matrix or these movies. But I asked an audience at Contact in the Desert, I said, how many of you believe that consciousness is fundamental? And they all raised their hand, almost everybody. And then I said, then how many of you believe that we're living in some kind of a simulation? And almost none of them raised their hand. And what they don't understand is that if consciousness is fundamental, then everything else is a simulation just by that definition. Consciousness is a sea of energy. We're sitting in a room with desks and tables and chairs. The desks and tables and chairs are coming forth from this conscious energy, and there is no other way to describe it than as a simulation. and that is in the simplest terms. But people don't understand that. If we're spiritual creatures having a human experience, which every religion and spiritual teaching teaches us, they all say that we're living in an illusion. Christianity says it. Jesus said it. Islam says not only is it an illusion, it's an almost laughable place, which is one of the reasons why they have no problem martyring themselves here, because in Islam, this is just a joke. Come here, do your thing, and go and meet your 70 virgins or whatever. But then the Eastern religions are the ones that put the illusionary nature of reality front and center in across multiple teachings. So we've been taught from day one that we're living in an illusion. And what's an illusion? It's a simulation. But people just can't seem to accept it in a way that makes sense. But once you do accept it, no matter how you have to rationalize it, then whatever we're seeing within this simulation can be here for a lot of different reasons. It can be here for a lot of different reasons, depending on who you are. You might see a flying saucer in the sky. Your friend might see a seagull. You might have a profound experience. Your friend just sees a bird. These things happen all the time because we have subjective reality and we have collective reality. And so this phenomena and they really could be, in a lot of ways, here just to open our eyes to the mystery that we're standing in the middle of, and to make us ask more questions about our existence. And then everything that happens with UAP and UFOs and experiencer contact and contact modalities, all of it is often subjective reality to the individual that's experiencing it. And so within this simulation, are there physical aliens and everything else? Probably. They could be just as likely as us, and they could also be spiritual creatures having a Palladian experience. It all comes forth from consciousness. But there's also a whole wide swath for beings that do not have to take flesh and blood to come into this simulation. They can come in and out. They can interact with us. We see them as ghosts, angels, demons, interdimensional beings. They don't claim a physical body, but they can still come here and interact. So yeah, to answer that short question is a long answer, but the thing is, that's what the film's about, is hold on, we need to start looking at what we're learning. Rizwan Virk is in the film as well, and he's the cutting edge guy for simulation theory. And I've been studying it since Nick Bostrom and David Deutsch wrote The Nature of Reality back even before The Matrix came out, talking about quantum computers. And we're definitely living in a simulation, even at the barest definition. There's no other way to describe it that makes sense. And the fact that we're living in a simulation really opens up the ability for that simulation to be highly adaptable. And it appears that is also true. It doesn't mean that we're not us. It doesn't mean that we're not spiritual beings that have come here to have this experience. It just illustrates that there has to be a mechanism that makes that experience possible. So anyway, long answer to a short question, but yeah, it's one of the cruxes of the film.
That's what we get with you being the guest. You get to speak freely. Ken, I do want to get Ken and Maria's takes on the simulation theory.
That's a lot like the near-death experience, where people are, having that experience. It's all about the energy. They come back, they know they go someplace. So there's that concept, Ron, of in something today called brain retraining, nervous system re-regulation, that your brain can be giving signals all the way down in your body. And let's say that you were hurt 4 weeks ago. You still feel it in your brain, but do you feel it in your brain, or is it consciousness that still thinks that it's going on? So it's a fascinating topic, and I fully subscribe to what you said, how you said it. And I've also read that same book. So definitely, I have not seen your film yet. It just came out. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, watch it on Amazon. Leave me some stars. Ken, you seem pretty dialed in. I can't wait to hear what you actually think about it when you see it. And the fact that you guys have seen it and you still have me on the show is very gratifying.
No,
because I took a lot of risk as a filmmaker on this movie.
Not blowing smoke. We enjoyed it. Maria and I really stayed.
I enjoyed the like the green screen behind the person, like you did little takes of that. I enjoyed seeing.
Oh yeah, there's a couple scenes in there where Gary Nolan is shown against a green screen while I'm talking to him. And when he's talking, like his role in the film, saying certain things, he's chroma keyed and we have the background. But when I was interviewing him, I thought it would be weird to have me on camera showing that I'm questioning him in a studio setting, and then put his special effects background behind him for that part. And so that's one of the reasons that I did it like that.
Speaking of Gary Nolan, is it fair to say that there was a moment in this film that you literally kind of got Gary over this evidence thing?
Yeah, that's why it's an accidental truth movie. Yeah, I got him.
Yeah, you did.
Sorry, Gary. But and you know, I don't know how bad I got him. Gary's always been a really good sport. In the very first movie, I got him, so to speak. I got him over the giving two different accounts of his possession of materials to two different podcasts. And then that was his famous I can't say anything more about that. It was such a great line that James Fox had him reenact it and put it at the end of the program. So that's out there in places. But yeah, look, the history of the Benny Foggin medal, it just speaks to that. This stuff could just be normal scrap aluminum. We don't know. The Arrow says it's just aluminum. The guy that tested it in conjunction with Arrow says it's got weird ceramic components. Psychics that have tested it say it's alive. Whitley Strieber thinks that it's part of a conscious craft, that this technology actually interacts telepathically with the pilots, and has its own consciousness. So it opens up a whole can of worms. But what this guy Benny has been through over trying to get a straight answer about this material, I mean, Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, Chris Bledsoe, and a camera guy, they go to this guy's house. They grab the sample, and they did a whole TV show about it. There's excerpts of it. This material's been on several shows. They take the stuff to Hal Puthoff. Lou Elizondo, he says that he got chased by orbs the whole way. He was driving solo, and that he was having all kinds of weird encounters. And then they get it to Hal Puthoff, and then what happens? Well, Benny can't get a straight answer out of anybody. We know that eventually Hal Puthoff gave the material to Gary Nolan. We know another sample was given to Jacques Vallée, who also gave it to Gary Nolan. And we know that the people at TTSA, Tom DeLonge and those guys, actually reached out to Benny and said that they'd seen the material levitate and they wanted to keep it longer, and new contracts were drawn up. And, you know, this is all documented. And so what's going on with this stuff? Hal Puthoff then says, well, I gave it to Gary, but there was no money to test it. And that could be true, I guess. Jacques Vallée, you know, I asked Jacques Vallée out about it at Contact in the Desert, and he basically handed me his card and said, yeah, talk to me about this later. And that was interesting because it was the first time I'd met him. And then, you know, so when I asked Gary, I interviewed him right after the hearings, and you guys saw in the movie, we literally hacked the hearings. We were texting questions, and we put these guys
to
in real time.
Right? You were texting Burleson.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and he was reading the questions right off his phone. And when he asked Lou Elizondo about Lockheed Martin being the one that had these materials, that was us that got that question on the board. And it revealed the truth about something we've been trying to figure out for a long time. What was this true story about Bigelow Aerospace receiving materials or not receiving them, and who had the materials? And now we know Lockheed Martin had materials that they were willing to give to Bigelow Aerospace, and somebody in the intelligence community blocked it from happening. But that was a huge reveal. And you see it in the movie. I think it goes over people's heads how big that was. It solved a big mystery. But back to Gary. So right after that, I fly to the Sol conference from Washington, D.C. I'm trying to remember. Oh, no, you know what? I went to Sol conference, but then I had to go back to interview Gary because he wasn't feeling well. So I go back to San Jose, where Stanford is. And then, if that's right, yeah, I go back to where Stanford is. I can't remember exactly what city. I get it mixed up. But at any rate, I'm interviewing him, and I tell him the story about Lou Elizondo and the materials. And he volunteers. Yeah, I was on the team that was supposed to receive that stuff. And he then goes on to say, I know exactly where they had it. So this is in the film. For anybody who says there's nothing new in the film, they should watch it. That's,
No, it is, yeah.
that's the one
There
thing
was
I
a-
might mention. But then I asked him about the Benny Foggin material, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, Gary, you got it from Jacques Vallée. Some of it's in the film, some of it's on the cutting room floor. But and he's like, well, people send me so much stuff, I just don't know. And you know, then it cuts to me wide, just kind of staring at him. And then the next shot in there is a screenshot that was taken of a Zoom call with him on the phone with the guy who had the material.
That was
So
classic.
it's like, you know, don't know what to say about that, but it just proves that there's something weird about this material, and for some reason, there's a lot of secrecy around it. And then Arrow tests it and says it's nothing but scrap aluminum. It has nothing unusual about it at all.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Hybridization. What's your take? Well, let me, before you get your take. I've been doing paranormal podcasts for several years, and we had a guest on several years ago before people were missing or dying. She shared that she's actively involved in this hybridization program that is government sanctioned in joint efforts with the ETs. And I've recently reconnected with her, obviously because of all this stuff's going on right now. And she initially, as a friend, said that she would do it, and then she followed up a few days later after talking to somebody. They advised her not to do it for fear of her life. That's what
that makes sense.
Yeah, but what's your take on hybridization program?
You know, there's a very strong case that if there has been aliens around us, or even an advanced species that lives under the ground after millions of years on planet Earth, or any variety, there is hybridization all over the fingerprints of our evolution. To think that there's some kind of hybridization program happening right now, I make the argument that we all could possibly be hybrids, that we've been engineered for some time at very key points. And that's why we have so many holes in the evolutionary journey of man. So refining us as a species, you kind of have to understand, if you're willing to look at this, that when you're looking at things from a galactic point of view, there's all kinds of different planets. This human body is a perfected form. As far as life being able to navigate physical reality, we have all the right tools. The feet, the hands, the eyes, just the layout of us that shows a certain amount of refinement that would take eons to accomplish through genetics or through just regular evolution. And so the idea that our DNA is of value and possibly mixed and experimented with other DNA for different purposes. Maybe they need a human with bigger lungs that can survive on a planet with less oxygen. We don't know what's going on from a galactic standpoint. There's all kinds of stories about maybe, a future race had its future humans are trying to replace DNA that they lost through some kind of catastrophe. There's a lot of evidence that we've had our genes manipulated in the past. And the stories that we're hearing today, there's a lot of evidence, at least anecdotal evidence, that these kind of things are still going on. And who's doing it and why they're doing it, I believe, is probably a variety of species doing it for a variety of reasons. But Earth itself, if you happen to be looking at it from space, is a very valuable piece of real estate. There's a lot of stuff here. It's a playground for scientists. It's covered with ridiculous amounts of variety of life and DNA. It's in the sweet spot. Even though there might be other planets like Earth throughout the galaxy and the universe, it's still a rarity. And that means that it has some value to any spacefaring species that might know about it. And so, yeah, I think that we need to get to the point where, as we accept non-human intelligence and aliens, we also have to accept that there's hybridization types of programs for a variety of reasons, even the evolution of humans on Earth. You know, where do you think these autistic kids are coming from? And why do they have these special powers? Is that hybridization, or is that just some weird trick of genetics and evolution? It's happened pretty quick. So, yeah, I think that I can't throw down and say I absolutely support that there's hybridization programs, because I can't prove it or even make solid case for it, but there's a pretty reasonable circumstantial case that this is happening.
You know, this month in June, as we're recording this, on June 2nd, reminder, Accidental Truth Next Beyond UFO Disclosure dropped. And again, Ron, Maria and I watched it this past weekend. Ken will watch it soon. And, you know, I know if I said it once, I know I said it a few times, and I think Maria did too, that there was moments in the film that we were like, that's new to me. I hadn't heard that, because the truth is, every documentary that comes out or film, there's a lot of the same talking points regurgitated, but yours very, very good. Now, pivot. Within the next few days, there's going to be another movie come out, June the 12th to be exact. What is your take on Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day?
You know, that's great. People have been asking me about that, and I think that Steven Spielberg is one of the greatest filmmakers of our time, and obviously, maybe even the greatest. And his past history into this field has given us an idea of what we may be able to expect from this one. And now, of course, people have seen it and the reviews are out. And I believe that the things that I've been saying are going to end up being correct. It's going to be a great roller coaster ride of a movie imbibed with grains of truth. And all of his films around ET seem to have been that way, or at least people would say it. And so we're going to get a great movie with things that may be true. I think people are expecting Disclosure Day to be disclosure. It's not a filmmaker's job to do that. So maybe he has inside information. He says he doesn't. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that think he's been fed certain things that he's incorporated into his films. And for people that are thinking that this is going to be some big revelation where you walk in to watch a movie and you walk out a disciple of a new religion, probably not going to happen. But is it a fantastic step in the right direction? I hope it is. I know that I have a joke where, you know, I say MUFON has over 150,000 cases. We've never documented a single one where a guy went crazy and built a sandcastle in his living room. We've never documented one where an alien walked into an experiencer's room with a cardinal on its antlers. And we've never had a single report of a extraterrestrial flying a bicycle. So at the end of the day, it's like people should expect a great movie, and they should expect another step towards understanding the truth. But don't think that you're going to go into this film and all of a sudden be enlightened about the biggest question facing humanity. It's not going to hurt, but it's not going to be a game changer because it's a movie.
All right, as we're winding down, I'm going to let my colleagues here give their final takes. To Ron, Ken, what you got?
Ron, my take is just thank you very much for being here. I loved what you had to say. Everything that you were talking about, I've thought about many times. I've agreed with you on all of this. Can't wait to see your film. What I want to know is, where can we find your film? What locations? Amazon, and where else can we go?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on Apple TV. It was #1 on Apple for a few days. I think it's #6 now. So go get it on Apple TV. I like to see the charts move. But Amazon, Apple, and YouTube. YouTube is the least expensive place to get it right now. They got it at $3.99, which is pretty cheap for a new release rental. So there's all those places, and you can find clickable links at accidentaltruthnext.com. So it's easy to find. All you have to do is search for it. It'll pop right up in whatever platform you want to use.
Been great having you here.
Yep. Maria, go.
Again, yes, thank you for accommodating us. We're not exactly organized, but we have a lot of fun.
You have a cool logo. I've been sitting here the whole time going, yeah, that's a pretty cool logo.
I appreciate it.
I can send him a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I'll send you a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So
But we look
Ken,
forward to
you
your
have my
next version.
contact info. Let me know what you think of the film when you see it, and drop a star rating if you get it on Amazon.
Will do. Will do.
We will be petitioning Dan and yourself to come back on down the road. I'll leave you with this, Ron. You put out, or I'm quoting you here. Disclosure is not the destination, it's the threshold. If the old denials completely stop working, what does a post-disclosure civilization look like to you?
It depends on what we do. There's two different outcomes, and really, I think that we're being allowed to self-determine by different agreements to keep hands off, while at the same time, different factions that want to see different outcomes for planet Earth are meddling in different ways. It's almost a human way. It's as above, so below. It's up to us. We've got to figure out how to change the way we're doing things on this planet. And it's the same thing we've been being taught. Experiencers are being told this. Got to quit polluting the planet. We've got to quit killing each other. We're not going to be accepted into a galactic family behaving like we do. And so, there are those who would like to see, I believe, humanity evolve and become galactic citizens. But there's also those, I believe, that would just as soon, roll us over and till the planet and start over with something new. So we're the ones that are deciding that. I think if if it becomes clear that we are going to completely self-destruct through something like a war, nuclear war, or any of those things, or destroy the planet to the point where we can't live on it anymore, some decisions are going to be made. And as Whitley Strieber says in my movie, they're either midwives or undertakers. And that's a really haunting line from the film, but I think it's true. And I think the outcome is up to us.
There you go. Ron, it's been an honor. Accidental Truth, as you mentioned, is Accidental Truth Next Beyond UFO Disclosure is available right now on Apple TV, YouTube Movies, Google Play, Amazon Prime. It dropped on June 2nd, so support independent investigative film and see what's coming next. For Ken, Maria, and me, thank you for tuning in to Still Unexplained Files. Keep looking at the skies, but don't forget to look beyond the narrative. Good night.
Thanks all of you for having me on. It was great.
Thanks, Ron.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.